Hey everyone. At this point, we are going to start taking a look at how, as a country, we are responding to the issue of wealth inequality and poverty. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this from kind of two angles, not only from government, but also social. Okay, so how has the government responded to poverty, and how do we, as maybe a community or more of that social level tier, take a look at poverty and try to assist those who are in need. So we're going to break this down by first taking a look at what is the history of trying to respond to poverty. We're going to take a look at some of the major issues like urbanization, industrialism, and that's really where we start to see poverty becoming a huge thing. And really, wages, how it plays a role into living systems, all of that. We'll take a look, obviously, at the Depression because that gets us ready to take a look at FDR's New Deals. Then we're going to take a look at where are we at now, current day, what are some national programs to help those who are in need, state programs, and our local programs. Just so you know, at the end of this video, there's going to be a slide that has all of the different resources that we talk about and the URL links, so that way if you have any questions or are interested in taking a further look at those organizations, you can do that. But please always know that you are able to reach out to myself, a teacher, or any of our amazing counselors who work here at Marshall Public Schools. So let's jump into the history first. Okay, we're looking at a period between roughly 1895 and 1930. Okay, leading up to this point, we start to see this mass migration of people moving away from their small farms, their small family-owned land, and moving into these big urban centers, moving into the cities. And they're doing this really because it was more reliable work. Okay, everyone in the family could work. Your children, your wife, your husband, and that's what was available at this time. Okay, you didn't have to worry about a season of crops failing or having to sell off some of your crops to whoever may be above you. Okay, and so as a result of this, we see more families getting employed by corporations rather than family-owned business. Okay, so we start to see this system of big business owners, CEOs, and then small employees. So this led to our system of industrialization, our industrialism era. If you have already taken US history or world history, okay, you probably have heard about this before. If not, this was a time period where people lived in a whole new way than ever before. A lot of different factories were becoming established in our major cities across the country, and as a result, there was a lot of job openings, and a lot of people needed jobs and wanted to have that reliable income. As we talked about before, where people were moving away from their farms, moving into the cities. And as we see these big businesses start to take hold of the country, there weren't a lot of rights or protections for workers, for the average worker. So a lot of times you were working very, very long hours. And when I say long hours, I'm talking between 10 to 14 hours a day, where you aren't making very much. Okay, definitely not enough to be sustainable for your whole family. And as a result, we start to see the establishment of labor unions, where it was essentially a group of people coming together who then could strike, they could ask for new wages, and essentially force business owners to come to a negotiation or agree to what some of their needs were. Out of this different negotiation process, the creation of labor unions, we start to see some safety procedures being put in place that specifically started to affect those in lower class families, lower class jobs. So one of those is employee safety called OSHA. Okay, this is called the Occupational Safety Hazard Administration. And this is a government response in order to help lower class working families, where you have to be guaranteed a certain wage, you can't work more than a certain number of hours, the age of children, started to become a requirement, so you couldn't just have like a 5-year-old kid working in a factory anymore. You had to have certain protections for workers. So if you are working in a dangerous job, do they understand that there's chemicals around, things like that. Even till today, any career that you go into, there's going to be an OSHA worksheet somewhere for you to take a look at and see what are the safety hazards that are involved with my job. So that gets us up to kind of the 1920s, 1930s. Okay, we start to see the economy and the way that people use money become inflated. Okay, we sometimes hear this being called a bubble. The economy was becoming this big bubble. Now, when economists or historians talk about the economy in this way, that means that the economy is continuously growing, growing, growing to the point where it is becoming so big that it is unstable in order to maintain that amount. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, so our stocks were increasingly high. Banks were giving out way too many loans. So there was essentially money being given out to individuals from banks that the bank didn't even have in hand yet. Okay, so people had money that didn't belong to them essentially at this point. So as all of these things start coming up, we're also seeing farm crop failures. Okay, during this time, we are starting to over-till the soil here in America. We don't know the science behind soil, how to make sure that the chemicals and nutrients are replaced after taking them by certain different crops. And as a result, we start seeing some major farming failures. And again, as a result, we're seeing this lack of food, fake money kind of going around. And again, it's that bubble growing, 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 and it all ends up collapsing. Okay, so it collapses because people start to question the system in place. We see that price speculation or rumors kind of flying around where, we know that the end of this big grand moment is kind of coming soon. We better start pulling out what we have invested in the stock market, save it for ourselves because we're worried that it's getting too big of an economy. Okay, so again, these rumors, speculation, on top of failing farms, on top of banks giving out too many loans, led to the crash. Okay, the stock market crash, we also call this Black Tuesday. This was in 1929. And so because of that stock market crash and banks having to close because they had given out too many loans, they were now bankrupt, people were out. People were out of jobs. Companies had to shut down or they had to fire a large amount of their employees. And so we see some of these major issues that are still associated with poverty here in our country coming up. In 1932, stocks were only worth 20% of their value that they were previously. Okay, so companies that previously were really, really rich, they weren't worth very much anymore. As far as unemployment, it got up to 15 million people were unemployed. Okay, so at this time, it was over 30% of the workforce. Okay, so you could consider it this way. 3 out of every 10 people had lost their jobs. Okay, that impacted America hard, especially American families where they still had children to support, wives to support at home. All of those, now those families were out of money. They were out of resources for food, clothing, houses, all of this. And we see again this major gap between poverty and the really wealthy. Okay, just a side note, because I know that we've talked at this point already kind of about race and ethnicity and the interconnectedness of all of our different issues we've talked about from unit to unit. African Americans were hit the hardest. Okay, if we're taking a look at this time period, we're living in an era of Jim Crow laws, right? We have separate but equal laws happening throughout the United States. And so most likely African Americans were the last to be hired and the first to be let go. So just something to throw in there. During the era of the Great Depression, okay, so we're taking again a look here at the 1930s, Our former president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he came into power. He was elected. And he had a promise of getting the United States out of this economy crash. And so he enacted what are called his New Deals. He had a couple of different packages that went through the government in order to help get people working again, getting money back into American citizens' hands. And so we see two big programs enacted that really helped end the Great Depression. So the first is Social Security, and that's a system that we still have around today. Okay, so Social Security is where citizens have a percentage taken out of their paycheck that goes into a big pot, essentially. And then that pot is then distributed among workers or employees, citizens who need immediate help. Okay, so this may be that you are disabled, or you've lost your job, or you are retired and you no longer can work. Okay, so you are able to redistribute that wealth from the richest of society back to these people who need it the most. Okay, so again, created by FDR, created to help get the country out of the Great Depression, and it's still a system that is in progress today. The second big thing that came out of that New Deal is the WPA, or the Works Progress Administration. This was a system set up by the federal government where they hired citizens to go around the country and do these different projects to help make the country essentially look pretty. So they were doing bridge work, roads, planting flower beds, railroad work, and they were all employees of the federal government. So the federal government was paying these people, and then these people would spend their money that is made back out on the economy. So not only is the federal government helping the economy start to build up again, but it's also it's lowering that unemployment number. Again, getting people back to work. So where are we at with our social systems today where we are helping people in need? I'm just going to go quickly kind of through these. If you guys want any extra information about them or you would like to visit the specific websites over these different topics, please feel free to take a look at the specific websites. They're going to have a lot of information about like what do they do, what is their mission, how can you help donate, or how can you help get resources from these different programs. So let's take a look at it from a couple of different government levels. We're going to take a look at the national programs first, then we'll go to state, and finally end at local. So nationally, again, we have Social Security, which we know from our previous slide that FDR was the one who was able to help initiate this government financial assistance. Again, there's a percentage coming out of the workforce paychecks, and that money is then going to a pot who then gets distributed towards those in need. Another program that our federal government has is called a Pell Grant. And this is available for anyone who is working towards a bachelor's degree. Okay, so post-high school education, it is helping anyone pay for their education if you meet a certain criteria. And that criteria is that your family doesn't make a certain amount. Okay? So a Pell Grant does not have to be repaid to the federal government. It's money that is granted by the federal government, again, for low-income families. And usually it won't pay for everything when it comes to college, but it will at least help with up to 50% of the costs associated with getting our continuing education. Furthering on, we have a section of our executive branch who works underneath the president. This is called Housing and Urban Development. Okay, and so this group is taking a look at different cities, different neighborhoods, and seeing where can we help get people into homes? Where can we help offset the amount that rent is costing in this area, so that way we can make sure that low-income families are able to afford even having a roof over their family. Okay, so there's a lot of different areas, especially in Southwest Michigan. If you are ever interested or you feel like your family is in need of taking a look at cheaper housing costs, please again take a look at some of the districts in this area. not only for Marshall, Albion, but also Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, Lansing. There's a lot of great different neighborhoods, again, helping those who are trying to get a good start on life and just need help when it comes to having that affordable housing. Next ones you probably have heard about before, but maybe you don't know what the differences are. From the federal government, we have provided health care for these two different areas. We have Medicare and Medicaid. Now you have to apply in order to get assistance from either of these programs. Medicare is our health coverage for 65 plus citizens or if you have a disability. Okay, and this is healthcare coverage because most likely these people are out of work, either because they have retired or again they have some sort of disability that is impacting their ability to be in the workforce. Medicaid, on the other hand, is health coverage of limited income families. So say that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever, they are working at a job that doesn't offer any health benefits and possibly are not able to make a whole lot of money to bring in and help support not only themselves, but maybe a spouse, children, things like that. In that case, families are able to apply for Medicaid, which is again that health coverage for our limited income families. At the state level, these are going to be the biggest impacts for our limited income families. We have the unemployment system. Now, this system had a workout this year, right? Thanks to COVID. We had a high number of individuals from the workforce who were unemployed, and when that happens, you can apply for unemployment. Now, this is temporary income, so it's not a permanent thing. If you apply for unemployment and you are approved, you have to show the program that you are actively seeking to get another job. Okay? You can't just sit on unemployment forever. Secondly, we've got WIC. Okay? You can also think of this maybe as like food stamps. And this is a program to help the health and nutrition of women who are either pregnant or breastfeeding, infants or children. So it is government funded, kind of like a credit card, where you get a preloaded card each month and you're able to buy certain foods in order to help that nutrition. So people with WIC cards who have applied and been approved, they can't just go out and buy Cheetos, right? That's not going to help the nutrition for this group that has been approved. You have to get fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, things like that. Another program that we have here in Michigan is free or reduced lunch programs. So if your family is limited income or needs assistance, they can apply specifically here at Marshall High School with Mrs. Rissy down in the office, and she can set your family up with getting a form, filling it out, and then our cafeteria staff is who's going to take a look at those needs and take a look at who needs to have assistance when it comes to, again, feeding our school-aged children. Now, this is a huge program. You may not realize it, but there are a lot of children who use this program, and there may be some even students here at our school where this is where they primarily are going to be getting their meals. So we are very thankful for this. Just a side note, on November 9th of 2020, just so you know, all breakfast and lunch is free at the high school. Okay, whether you meet that free or reduced lunch program or not, all lunch and breakfast is free for this entire year, thanks to awesome community members who have helped out our school program. So take advantage of this. Please let us know again if you need any help from any of these programs. Finally, we're taking a look at what are these local programs here in Marshall, Albion, Battle Creek that can help limited income families. One is United Way. Okay, a branch off of United Way is Max. This is something that you probably hear a lot about here at the high school or maybe on social media. We typically advertise donating to Max very heavily, maybe during homecoming or your Winterfest games. right? It's usually a competition among the different grades of who can raise the most money for United Way of Marshall. And this is a way to help our community keep health, strengthen education, and help out with financial stability. Now, when it comes to children or school-aged citizens, usually we're going to see United Way provide for, again, our lunch programs, maybe assisting students with getting coats for the winter, our food pantries. Okay, so all of those programs are coming out of United Way. Habitat for Humanity is another great local program where they're going to build affordable housing. Okay, so they're building housing out of donation funds, being able to support families get into that house who maybe have low income and previously wouldn't have been able to buy it. And then they're going to help furnish this house that they have built. Again, a really great program for our local communities. Finally, another great area to either volunteer for or donate is our Haven of Rest. This is our local homeless shelter located in Battle Creek, Michigan, and they have different opportunities like soup kitchens, donations, clothing opportunities, different counseling sessions for people within this community because it's a cyclical issue. So getting out of that system, breaking the normal, helping our community get back up on its feet. Like I said, here is a link to all of the different local, state, and national programs that are available for individuals or families who are of limited income. All great opportunities, all great ways that either our government or individuals are stepping up and helping take care of each other. So if you would like to have any additional information over these different programs, if you or someone you know is in need of assistance, please reach out to myself, Mrs. Rissy, or any of the 3 counselors downstairs. We are all great resources and we can set you up with who needs help. Let me know if you guys have any questions.